dear community. What a joy to be together in today's first day of our second full day of the retreat, but it's our first day of all of us being together. And our teacher, Tai, used to explain this retreat like a Dharma festival, and to really give ourselves permission and give ourselves the encouragement for us to allow ourselves to be here. The first Dharma seal of Plum Village is, I have arrived and I am home. It's very poetic. It's very beautiful. But it's not a theory. It really is a practice. And this deep insight of, I have arrived, I am home, it comes from the mud of suffering. When our teacher was in the United States in the 60s to shine the light of the suffering of what was happening in Vietnam, because of his peace work, he was exiled from his own home. And to all of us, the feeling of home is a feeling of safety, a feeling of refuge. Your family, your communities, your friends, the ones who you've expressed and shared your deepest aspiration. And suddenly one day you hear the announcement that you cannot return home. And believe it or not, our teacher, a Zen master, as many of us know, also suffered deeply, also touched deep despair, touched deep loneliness. And he explained it many times to us as students, like a cell removed from the collective body that he was used to. And in that moment, the cell has some options. One of the options is to give up and to fall into the depths of despair and suffering. And another option is the cell can recognize that even in the individual, it carries and embraces the collective that is outside of the cell. And our teacher chose the latter. And the practice of Zen is when we recognize that there are strong emotions, there are feelings that are not to our best interest. It is still our responsibility as an individual, as a practitioner, to come inward and to embrace, to recognize what is there, to hold it, to see it, to name it. Hello, my loneliness. I feel you. You are present. And the root of the loneliness is because I cannot come home. I cannot be with my friends, my community. And when we start to see the path of where this seed of suffering comes from, we start to understand it. And by understanding it, we are shining the light of awareness. We're not pushing it aside. We're holding and recognizing. And we can guide these feelings into the present moment, because in each and every one of us individually, we are not only one emotion such as loneliness or an emotion of despair. We also have the seeds of mindfulness. Believe it or not, all of us, we have Buddha nature inside of us. Buddha, Bud means awakening. And each and every one of us, as young as a child, has the seed of awakening in them, in us. And when we start to generate our awareness, our attentiveness, we touch the seed of mindfulness that is present in us. Mindfulness is an energy that gives us the capacity to establish our presence. We have the presence of being there for ourselves, to calling the present moment by its name, to embrace the present moment, to guide it, whether it is a strong emotion, we can guide it in our steps. We can channel it in our breath. And by practicing mindfulness of an emotion and of a feeling like this, we also touch the other capacities that we have inside of us. We have the seed of love. We have the seed of care, of kindness, generosity. So all of these other seeds that are present, sometimes they are being overwhelmed by a negative seed. And because when a negativity comes up inside of us, we have a tendency to run away from it. And running away from it is not an individual habit, it's a collective culture. And this is why our present moment, when a strong emotion arises, the first tendency is to look for an escape, a feeling that can relieve us from the present moment. And this feeling, such as excitement or joy, looking for superficial joy or pleasure seeking, we inherit all of these habits because it is so much around us. But if we use the lens of mindfulness, we have an opportunity. We can change and we can transform, quote unquote, our running away, whatever habit it leads towards, into a bell of mindfulness. When we're in Plum Village, we have been instructed every time we hear the sound of the bell, it is an invitation for all of us to stop and to pause. Because we don't have yet this tendency, this good habit of stopping and coming back to the body, being aware of the breath. So every time we hear the sound of the bell, we are investing, we're cultivating our habit of knowing how to pause and to be still, to come back to the body, to recognize, and just to know that you are alive. You are here. You're in Plum Village. You have 24 hours ahead of you. How will you live it? These are questions and contemplations that we can check in from time to time. And this is a bell of mindfulness. It's a very pleasant sound. For all of us monastic, it's become a system. Whenever we hear the bell, wherever we are, in Paris, in Plum Village, in New York, something that is similar to a bell, we just automatically stop. That becomes a good habit. How can we see some of our negative habits to become a bell of mindfulness? I have one. When I start to doom scroll on Instagram, on Facebook, and so on, I can catch myself, you are suffering. You are numbing yourself. And you are just doom scrolling. And I've done it enough. Sorry, Ty. I've done it enough to know that it offers no satisfaction. If anything, it waters more the seed of inferiority complex in me. So I start to, instead of seeing it as an enemy, I start to see it as a bell of mindfulness. Every time I start to doom scroll, I stop, turn off the screen, put the phone away, and train myself, first and foremost, to be in the state of emptiness. Maybe not knowing what other feelings can arise, but just giving yourself permission to feel and then to dwell and be present. And each breath like this, with attentive mindfulness of learning to let go of an habit that is running away and bringing me back to this moment, I start to have a lot of aha moments. Aha, you're running away because you just read an email that is very unpleasant. And you want to escape from this feeling of helplessness. So you scroll. And I start to see particular habits, particular patterns. This is mindfulness. This is awareness. But seeing and recognizing is one action. And having the courage to know the more you do this, it leads to more suffering. We got to take a step back. A lot of us, including all of us still practicing, we recognize suffering. We recognize habits. But we don't have the courage and the ability to take a step back. Because it becomes a pattern, it becomes an identity. Even suffering becomes an identity. So when we start to come home to the present moment, I have arrived, I am home. This insight is in this moment. You are the artist. How are you painting this present moment will become your past. And how you are painting this present moment is generating, creating the future that is right here. And this insight was very helpful for me. Because we learn about, we call this the teachings of the three times, the present, the past, and the future. The three times inter-are, the three times weave together. And when we say dwelling in the present moment, it doesn't mean forgetting the past. But our ability to be drowning into the past is very strong. It becomes a radio station that we play the same song again and again and again. And we all have particular channels that we gravitate towards. And we have a non-stop radio station. And there are wonderful musics that we can play in the present moment. There are the present moment new experience that we are in touch with. But if we're not present, we can't see it and we can't feel it. So the first Dharma seal of Plum Village, I have arrived, I am home. Arriving is to our own seat of mindfulness. Coming home to is the home of the present moment. And this was a key that unlocked our teacher's feeling of refuge. The present moment becomes his new home. And therefore, the identity of my nation, I'm not limited to that. I am deeply connected to that. But I'm also a continuation. I am in you and you are in me. My community can be outside, but the community is also deeply ingrained in me. So this insight, we call it interbeing. And if you have been to a Plum Village retreat, you hear this word a lot. If you are new to the practice and to our community, we can just dive in a little bit in this insight. Interbeing. We are all human beings. We're living beings. But a lot of the times, through the culture that we have, we think that we are separated. We have a notion that we are separated, that we are more superior than the animal realms, the realm of our nature, our environment. And because we have been transmitted this particular way of thinking, we allow ourselves to be numb. We allow ourselves to not open ourselves to see and to feel what is outside, the pain and the suffering, even in our family, even in our loved ones. In Buddhism, in true love, there is no barrier between you and me. Your joy becomes my joy. Your happiness automatically touches the seed of happiness inside of me. Your pain and your suffering that I can see and I can feel, I can also recognize it inside of me. A lot of times when we fall in love, we fall in love with only the beauty. And we stay attached to that beauty. But as we know, the river of life, we're constantly changing, constantly evolving. We are also continuing to experience what life has to offer us. And sometimes that is suffering. And suffering, when we recognize that and we see that, there is a tendency that we would like to push that away. It's like, oh, I'll wait until you're happy and I'll come back. And we start to separate and divide ourselves. And the insight of interbeing, it tells us that when we look deeply in ourselves, us as a being, we cannot be alone. If we look deeply into ourselves, we can see, I can see my father, my mother. I can see my teacher, my spiritual teachers, my mentors, my friends. I can see and I can embrace and even celebrate the misfortune that I also encounter. Because all of these experiences have offered me who I am today. Some of it has helped develop my capacity of compassion, my capacity of generosity. So we can meditate and we can reflect on our own self, and we can see what are the me element that I so identify that can also be a blockage to my communication, my relationship. Because our teacher has said, to be is to interbe with everything that is present. If we remove the trees, if we remove the sunshine, if we remove the food, if we remove the education, the culture, who are we? We're actually empty of our me element. But Buddhism is also a lot of times contradicting itself, because it also says you have to be in order to interbe. So this also means that in ourself, as a human being, on the ultimate level, inside of me, there is all the conditions of the past that has come together for me to be. All of the potentials that I have, that we have, for us to cultivate and generate, and that we can become. But in the historical, in this very moment, I am also Brother Phap, and I have a responsibility to understand my impact of myself in this moment. So we cannot use interbeing as an escape from responsibilities. Oh, I don't need to do it. We all interbe. The community can do it. The community can be peaceful. I don't need to be peaceful. Somebody else is doing it. But the notion and the insight of being as a self, it also embraces the insight of interbeing. To be alive is to interbe with everything that is in the here and now, as well as embracing what has already passed. It is still alive in us. So in this moment, we are here. Some of us are with families. Some of us are with children, our children. We have the opportunity to be with our children in a way that we can already see us in them. We can see that ourself is already continued in them, that they will carry us forward into the future. This can help us also remove fear. Because if we see that there is a continuation, what is our responsibility in the present moment? Our responsibility is to live profoundly deep this present moment. We have the responsibility to improve our quality of being. Because children, they're like a sponge that soak up what is present for them. They learn not only by the words, but they learn by the presence of each and every one of us. And each and every one of us, our actions become a transmission. Our contribution to teaching already begins by action, just by showing up. So in the orientation, I am sure we have been invited to slow down. Give ourselves this permission while we're in Plum Village to slow down. We have the habit of being in gear 5 all the time in society. And coming into a retreat, we have an aspiration to live deeply each moment, to be mindful of our actions. But to help us, to intentionally help us do this, we have to intentionally also slow ourselves down in order to feel what is there in the present moment. Yesterday, I had a talk with some friends, and they shared, "Brother, I just arrived and I'm so tired. Is this normal? Why do I want to sleep all the time?" I said, it is absolutely normal. It's because you finally giving yourself permission to rest. You're finally giving yourself permission to be present. And your body is like, oh my gosh, he's present for me. What do I need to tell him? I'm super exhausted. So if you find yourself sleeping in sitting meditation, do not think it is a failure. If you are falling asleep during meditation or even this Dharma talk and you are snoozing off, nothing is lost. Because our consciousness is not just our ears, but we're also receiving the collective energy. And we're also allowing ourselves to take in the collective community's energy. And this is where we can tap into the interbeing of community. We all have a deep aspiration of improving our quality of mindfulness and practice. And we may find ourselves, quote unquote, failing or not being mindful. We may wake up and say, today, every time I open the door, I'm going to be so mindful of it. And then during the day, even in Plum Village, because there's no perfect place, you may be triggered. You can be triggered. You may see something and all this, and you think, oh my gosh, even in Plum Village, this can arise. It's like exactly because you're in Plum Village, it arises and it gives you an opportunity. You can see it, you can be with it, and you can still choose to generate kindness. You can still choose to accompany particular energies that we can call negative, but we can still bring up kindness and acceptance and still be with it. But we are more than one emotion. Please remember this. We are more than one feeling. So when we find ourselves not mindful, we can just take a pause. We can see the collective community. And we may see a friend walking mindfully. That is a bell of mindfulness for us. To stop, to slow down, and to enter into our cultivation of mindful practice. So each and every one of us, we are co-creating this retreat together. It's not just the monastics teaching and guiding, but in our spirit of the retreat, we all support one another. So your presence of mindfulness may be a reminder, may be a bell of mindfulness for somebody else that is next to you, that is in the space. So we start to also see the shared responsibility of developing and generating a collective mindfulness practice. Let us enjoy the sound of the bell together and feel and allow our breath to really be there for us. Allow yourself to really be there for the breath. The core teachings of Plum Village and of Buddhism is to be able to identify suffering. Because suffering in Buddhism, we see it as a noble truth. Suffering is a universal shared experience that each and every one of us as human beings, we will go through. And this is why when we're able to recognize and be in touch with our own suffering, and we can feel the pain that is present, we can also know that our beloved ones also suffer. And this helps expand our capacity of accepting. We look for a soulmate that can help balance us, that can help be what we are not. But sometimes when we find them, and then they also have suffering, we feel that we want to look for something else. But it is the understanding in Buddhism that suffering is a noble truth. And it is noble because it helps us be in touch with pain, and it grows our understanding. And the acceptance that we suffer is an awakening. When we talk about enlightenment, we may have a perception we need to practice 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, and then we can reach enlightenment. But for us, enlightenment is enlightenment of something. We are waking up to something. Also, when we can be in touch, I have pain, I have suffering. Therefore, the ones around me also have pain and suffering. Already a bridge is there, an understanding is there. And our expectations, we can slowly let go of. And we can see the other person for who they are, for both their flowers and their mud and compost. Because in Buddhism, the relationship between well-being and ill-being, happiness and suffering, they coexist and they support each other. When we have been able to touch peace in us, we know how valuable that is. And therefore, we will do everything in our actions of body, speech, and mind to continue to cultivate peace. Because peace in oneself that we establish, and we transform also the wars that are inside of us, the violence that are inside of us, the hatred that is inside of us. If we can transform these seeds that we have also inherit, we're also building and transmitting peace. And when we talk about peace work, there's many layers to it. And we all try to contribute to the expansive, the collective peace work. There are peace warriors, there are activists. There are those of us, I know also in this space, who have the aspiration to shine the light where there is suffering. And we may think that that is the only action leading towards peace. But in the light and in the experience of our teacher, why have he created these retreats? Because these retreats are also part of transforming violence and hatred in our hearts. And each and every one of us has this responsibility. There are violence, there are pain that we've experienced. And if we're not mindful, we reenact what we have received. And this becomes a continuous cycle of pain, of violence, of discrimination. So these retreats are also a collective development and cultivation of peace. Because what we embody is what we express, what we transmit. So when we look back at our individual practice, we can see very clearly that the transformation that we are able to cultivate in us has an impact. It has a contribution. We've talked about what is in society is also inside of us. The systems of society is also inside of us. We're also in some way part of a culture, part of a society, part of a system. And if we want deep systems change, it also all begins with each and every one of us individually. And we speak, recently we've had the opportunity to work with a lot of climate activists who give their whole life to the care for Mother Earth, because this has an impact to all of us and future generations. And as we go into retreat with them and listen, one of the, we can see the root of suffering is the inability to be with pain inside of us. It's the inability to recognize and embrace suffering that is inside of us. Because when pain and suffering comes up, we run, we consume. So consumerism is now a very big part of our culture, of our system, even of identity. And in order to have transformation and change, we all have to learn to arrive, be at home, and hold the pain, and to embrace and to call it by its name. So I would like to just share being with pain in the insight of our tradition here. Being with Pain 101. But before I go there, I'm just going to give a very quick introduction or a recap for those of us who are already aware of the 16 exercises of mindful breathing. And I'll just touch base on the first 8 exercises of mindful breathing. So as we know, mindfulness is to generate and to be able to recognize our in-breath and out-breath. Because as long as we're alive, we're breathing. So the seed of mindfulness is there. So the first exercise is identifying, becoming aware our in-breath and out-breath. Our second practice is to follow our in-breath and out-breath. So we may have mindfulness, but our mindfulness can dissipate and can disappear really quickly. So when we practice taking refuge and following the in-breath and out-breath, we're also developing our concentration, our capacity to be there for our breath, to be there for the present moment. The third exercise is the miracle of having a body, for its well-being and ill-being. So aware of body. How many times have we been sucked into our work for 3 hours, 4 hours, and we forget that we even need to use the toilet, right? Or we all know we should drink enough water to be healthy, but we can focus on our projects, our work, our care, and we even forget that we have a body and that we need to also be mindful and attentive to ourselves. So aware of the body as we breathe in, smile to the body, know that you have a body. The fourth is to calming the body. Or sometimes we can even say to release the tension that are in the body. So these are the first 4 steps, and we can practice this anywhere, whether we're sitting in a meditation hall, doing practice with the community, whether we find ourselves walking alone, taking a moment to just pause, identify, be with the breath, aware of the body, see if there's any tension, and then releasing, calming the body. The 5th exercise is to generate joy. 6, to generate happiness. Some of us, when we hear the word joy and happiness, we may be allergic to it. We may be triggered by it, and each and every one of us have different relationship to these words. But my dear friends, it is very much our responsibility to have the capacity to generate joy in yourself. It is very much our responsibility to see that even amidst suffering, there is happiness that can be present and that is present. But do you recognize and do you see it for the miracle that it is? When we hear the news, when we see the suffering, we don't ignore it. We can really see it, and we can really understand and be connected to the pain. But at the same time, if we drown in it and we don't have a stable foundation for us to handle and embrace it, then we also allow the suffering to hijack our life, to take over. So it is very much our responsibility to be able to identify joy and happiness. And joy and happiness here, let us remove from the view of the advertisement industry that have given us what joy and happiness is. It's not a diploma. It's not a position. It's not more money. It's not more fame. It's not more sex, more desire. But joy and happiness is already identifying that being alive is a miracle. We never know of impermanence when impermanence arrives and takes our well-being away. And one of the contemplations that we always do as practitioners is the 5 awareness. I am of the nature to grow old. I cannot escape growing old. I am of the nature to get ill. I cannot escape illness. I am of the nature to die. I cannot escape death. Everything, the 4th one, everything that I hold dear to me, one day I have to learn to say goodbye, to let go. And the 5th remembrance, our continuation, our legacy, we can say. It is the actions of our body, of our speech, and of our thinking. These, we call them the 3 karmas, the 3 actions. Thinking, speech, and action. So we know that for us as practitioners, thinking is already action. What we cultivate in our minds, for us, that becomes an action directly towards oneself. What we produce in our minds either drains our energy or gives energy, or at the same time it can also coexist, then our speech, what we say, the way we say it, even if it is truth, but the way we speak of the truth, is that bringing reconciliation and understanding? Or is that to even divide even more? So speech is a transmission. It is an action. And then our bodily action, the act of kindness, the act of mindfulness, the act of compassion. And we see historically there are many great beings. They are not with us today, but their way of thinking have been transmitted to us. Their way of speaking and their actions in their lifetime becomes reminder and teachers for us. So all of us as individual in the fifth remembrance is that our legacy, our continuation, they are these three karmas of our thinking, our speech, our action. So when you can generate joy and you can generate happiness, the simplicity of having a cup of tea to drink or having coffee meditation. We've grown our coffee club in Plum Village. It wasn't there in the early days, but the joy of also drinking coffee and to even identify that nobody has the right to take away that happiness. I have a routine every morning. I have to establish, it is my rhythm, it is my responsibility to be caffeinated. Moderation is the key to all of this. But to know that a cup of tea, a cup of coffee can be a joy and happiness. That is a practice. That is something that we can allow ourselves. And our teacher always says, don't look too far for joy and happiness. Sometimes it's right there, but you've ignored it for the longest time. Number 7 and number 8 is to become aware of our painful feelings. And then calming, caring of painful feelings, emotions. And this comes from the teachings of the Buddha. So over 2,600 years ago. And it is still very relevant today. And you can see that the Buddha was like a doctor. Like when we go into surgery, we go to take care of pain, we have to make sure we're healthy enough, we're strong enough before they can operate in our body. So before we come to the painful emotions and feelings, we also have to have the balance, our capacity for holding the pain and being with the pain. So the responsibility of generating joy and happiness is very crucial, is very important. When we speak on painful feelings, this is very general. But as a mindfulness practitioner, we have to be able to identify and name it. So these are some steps that can help us. Number 1, there is a painful feeling. There's an emotion that is present. Step number 2, name the pain, name the feeling. And sometimes, for example, let's say anger arises. We can name it anger, but we know anger is not alone. A lot of the times it takes a few more other feelings to arrive there. We may have felt hurt, we may have felt misunderstood, and then we feel the anger. But by naming it, we also have an opportunity to see its roots, where it's coming from. And then the third step, being with painful emotions and feeling, where is it in your body? Is it in your jaw? Is it in your hands? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in your chest? So these feelings, they communicate also through the body. So where is it alive in our body? And then the fourth step is to embrace it. I've actually used my hand as I can see it as the energy of mindfulness, the tenderness, and I can put it on my shoulders where I would tense up, and I can feel it, I can name it, my stressful tensions that are here. And I start to embrace it. I start to be with it. The fifth step, when you embrace it, breathe with it and guide it. We do a lot of sitting meditation, but when you're angry and you're very emotional, don't sit. You're gonna cook it even stronger. You're gonna keep cultivating it and say, yeah, I'm right. Actually, this is when you're embracing it and you want to also be open to see it. Take refuge in nature. Go for a walk. Surrender yourself to your steps in nature. Allow the feelings to also be present. Because then you can inquire, where are you coming from? Where are these emotions and feelings coming from? We can even communicate to it. One time, I was very much in love. And you know, monastics, our love should be boundless. It shouldn't be for just one person. Because that's our greatest vow, is to be able to cultivate unconditional love. And in order to be of service for everyone, we don't devote our service to just one person. So that's a high aspiration, and it's very difficult. And we talk a lot about taking care of our sexual energy, learning to be aware of attachments, being aware of our boundaries, very important. And one time I was so in love, and I'm sure all of us have been in love. When you're in love, that person shows up everywhere. Sitting beside the Buddha, push the Buddha aside, that person's right there. I was Thai's attendant and I was deeply in love. I'm like, Thai, man, I want to leave you to be with that person. And it becomes very, 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 very strong. And a part of me is, I know that this is not right. A monk being in love like this, so wrong. And I keep replaying that. But the more I was rejecting it, it became stronger. So finally, one day I'm like, oh my gosh, the way out is in, right? You gotta look inwards and say, man, I am so in love. And just accept it, just embrace it, and just say, and where are you coming from? And I started to have a communication with the energy of desire and of love. And I know my deepest aspiration is to grow my love, to expand and embrace all. But at that time, I can't ignore the fact of this deep attachment. And I start to see it and identify it and start to speak to it and saying, oh, you're in love. And this feeling of wanting to be with somebody is also very much close to your seat of loneliness. And because my loneliness is present, but I've also ignored it. And because I think I'm in community, so my loneliness is always being cared for. But when I'm not mindful of it and I ignore it, the loneliness becomes also larger. And when somebody shows up and is exactly fulfill particular check boxes, you want to venture there. And as I was explaining and as I was speaking to this emotion, I also felt that the emotion also had a chance to be listened to and also to be transformed. Because as a human being, even monastic, we have the seed of father, mother, or parents inside of us. We also have the desire to have a continuation. But we also have to be reminded that we are also more than this. And as I embraced and I sat with it and I spoke to it, there was a freedom, there was a liberation. And it comes to the seventh step, is letting go of the story. We all have a story to our pain and feeling. And we can experience it. But if we keep holding onto that exact story, we are not allowing ourselves to transform. We're not allowing ourselves to experience something that is new, that is present. And it may not mean that the whole pain of that is never going to be present, because it's now a part of us. It's like a scar in our body. But we have the capacity to heal it by also accepting it and allowing it to heal. And it's not a perfect heal, but it can continue on. And because you can continue on. So letting go of a story. And each and every one of us, we can check in to see which stories we have been carrying. And that story can be the exact blockage to our present moment and our new experience. And number 8, when you can let go of it, you can allow the pain to shift. You can also allow the pain to be transformed. We have a practice of touching the earth in our tradition. And sometimes when us monastics, we go through our own crisis in our life. And it is more than us. And sometimes we feel overwhelmed by it, and we bring our hands to our forehead, our mind, our body together. And sometimes we envision our whole lineage of ancestors, spiritual and blood, that have transmitted everything to us, present here. And then we would prostrate, we would touch the earth. It's an act of surrendering. We open our hands to express our openness, our letting go. And we let the pain and the suffering also shift to the earth. The earth has a great capacity of embracing and transforming. So sometimes when we literally say we take refuge in Mother Earth, we literally do it. We literally learn to let go of the self, of the stories, of the past. And we can stay in this position, we can breathe with it. We can listen to what is there, we can channel even the story, and I let go of the story. because I have a new chapter today. Today, each 24 hours is a new page. As artists, as writers, as composers, how are you writing? How are you drawing? That becomes your new past. That becomes your new future. Thank you very much, dear community. Let us listen to 3 sound of the bell together and just let go of even everything I've said. Just let it go. And trust that it has entered. And what seeds it have watered, it has watered. Which questions it have left in you, just allow it to be. Don't look for the answers. Don't look for enlightenment after this week. Just to be, just be.